The Case of the Vanishing Ventriloquists. A Raven Darkblade Mystery. Chapter 4. The Mediocre Reveal. Detective Raven Darkblade stood outside the home of Vincent Vox at exactly 8:43 p.m. Or was it 9:34? His watch had started running backwards after witnessing the puppet recursion. The house looked like what would happen if suburban anxiety had a baby with beige paint. Aggressively normal on the outside, probably hiding something terrible on the inside. He was alone because Officer Jenny Shoutsloud was busy trying to explain to her captain why the evidence locker now contained 3 dead dummies and a hot dog with teeth marks that might or might not be wooden. His height had stabilized at 5 feet 10 inches, which was his investigating height, as opposed to his confident height, 6 feet 2 inches, or his confused height, 5 feet 7 inches. Just a routine questioning, Raven muttered to himself, walking up the pathway lined with garden gnomes that seemed to follow him with their painted eyes. Nothing suspicious about the worst ventriloquist in the city, living alone with his dummy collection. He rang the doorbell, which played The Entertainer. But sadly, like someone had taught it depression. The door opened to reveal Vincent Vox, a man who looked like he'd been assembled from the spare parts of other more successful ventriloquists. His hair was thinning in patterns that suggested giving up, and his smile was the kind you'd practice in a mirror and still get wrong. "Detective Darkblade," Vincent said, with genuine surprise that seemed actually genuine. "What brings you to my humble home? Did someone complain about my practicing again? I told Mrs. Next Door I'd keep it down after 10 p.m. "May I come in?" Raven asked, already stepping inside because asking was just a formality. The living room was a shrine to ventriloquism, if shrines could be sad and smell like mothballs and broken dreams. Posters of famous ventriloquists covered the walls, each one signed with messages like, "Keep trying, Victor," and "Maybe consider mime Jeff Dunham." "I heard about the puppet murders," Vincent said, wringing his hands in a way that would have been suspicious if everything about him wasn't already mildly concerning. "Terrible business. Those were talented dummies. Well, talented compared to mine." "Speaking of your dummy," Raven said, trying to sound casual and achieving something closer to constipated, "where's Mortimer?" "Oh, he's downstairs in my workshop, practicing for tonight's show. Would you like to meet him?" Fair warning, his jaws being held on with hope and wood glue. Before Raven could answer, a sound drifted up from below. Muffled voices. Multiple voices. And was that applause? Very unenthusiastic applause. "What's that noise?" Raven asked, his detective instincts finally detecting something. "Oh, that's just my new sound system," Vincent said quickly. "I recorded audience reactions to practice with. Nothing builds confidence like canned laughter, even if it sounds more like canned crying." Raven's height shot up to 6 feet 0 inches with suspicion. "Mind if I see this workshop?" "Well, it's quite messy," Vincent started, but Raven was already heading toward the basement door, which was painted with a sign that said, "Vincent's Ventriloquist Venture. Vendors welcome," because apparently alliteration was important. The stairs creaked with every step, each creak harmonizing with the next to create a symphony of structural concern. The sounds grew louder. Definitely voices. Definitely multiple. Definitely distressed. Really, detective, there's nothing interesting down here. Vincent called, following nervously. Just dummy parts and broken dreams. Mostly broken dreams. The basement was dark, lit only by a single bulb swinging back and forth like a pendulum counting down to revelation. And there, in the center of the room, was a scene that made Raven's brain hurt more than the time he tried to understand cryptocurrency. 3 men sat tied to chairs, their mouths gagged with what appeared to be tiny bow ties. Jerry jokes a lot, Winston wisecracks, and Terence Twitchison, the missing ventriloquists, alive, but looking like they'd seen things, terrible things, mediocre things. And there, on a makeshift stage, was Mortimer the Mediocre. The dummy was even worse in person. His tuxedo was more duct tape than fabric, his hair was clearly yarn stolen from a craft store, and his jaw hung at an angle that suggested his creator had never seen an actual human face. He was mid-performance, telling a joke. Knock, knock. Mortimer's voice was like nails on a chalkboard that was also made of nails. The ventriloquist's eyes widened in terror. I said, knock, knock. Mortimer screamed, his one good eye rolling wildly while his button eye stayed perfectly still. Mph, mph. The gagged ventriloquists tried to respond. Who's there? I'll tell you who's there. Orange. Orange, you glad I didn't say banana, but I forgot to say banana first. The joke is ruined. Start over. Vincent, Raven said slowly, his height dropping to 5 feet 8 inches with dawning horror. What is happening here? Vincent looked genuinely confused. I don't know. I just come down here to get props. Mortimer practices on his own. He's very independent. Silence. Mortimer's head spun completely around, which should have been impossible, but nothing was impossible anymore. We have a new audience member. Detective Darkblade. I've heard of you. You solved the case of the missing Tuesday. Spoiler alert. It was Wednesday the whole time. You can talk without Vincent? Raven asked, his entire worldview crumbling like a cookie in milk. Oh, I've always been able to talk, Mortimer cackled, a sound like a garbage disposal trying to laugh. Vincent's just been holding me back, making me do his terrible act. Do you know how embarrassing it is to be a bad dummy of a bad ventriloquist? It's like being the understudy to failure. The 3 ventriloquists tried to speak through their gags, making sounds that probably meant help us, but could have been the horror, the horror. So you killed the other dummies? Raven asked, trying to piece together a case that had already assembled itself. Killed? Killed? I gave them glorious deaths, theatrical send-offs. Mr. Chuckles got to rob a bank. Professor Wisewood conducted a symphony. Little Tommy got his name in the papers. All I asked in return was appreciation. Applause. But did they give it? Mortimer gestured wildly at the corner of the basement, where Raven now noticed the 3 dead dummies, propped up like the world's most disturbing audience. Jerry here. Mortimer pointed at Jerry Jokesalot with a hand that was missing 2 fingers. Refused to clap after my 15th performance. Said his hands hurt. Wooden hands don't hurt. But I don't have wooden hands, Jerry tried to say through his gag, which came out as mf, 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 wooden mf. So you executed Mr. Chuckles, Raven said, the pieces falling into place like a jigsaw puzzle made of crazy. With a tiny gun I bought from a dollhouse store. Very expensive, but Jerry needed to learn. Then Winston here gave me a golf clap. A golf clap. Do you know how insulting that is? Winston shook his head vigorously, trying to indicate that any clapping for Mortimer's act was generous. So Professor Wisewood had to go, stabbed during his finest performance. And then Terence tried to leave. During my show, the audacity. Wait, Vincent said, still genuinely confused. Mortimer, are you saying you kidnapped 3 ventriloquists and have been forcing them to watch your act? Our act, Vincent. But you never let me shine. It's always Mortimer. Your jaw fell off again. Never Mortimer. That knock-knock joke was approaching adequacy. How long have they been down here? Raven asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know. 6 days, Mortimer announced proudly. 6 days of culture. Entertainment. The same 17 knock-knock jokes because I can't remember the new ones. They've heard my rendition of The Lonely Goatherd 47 times, in various keys. All wrong. The ventriloquist's eyes conveyed a suffering beyond words. But here's the thing, Detective, Mortimer continued, his loose jaw swinging hypnotically. Tonight was going to be my grand finale. One last show. Vincent's been invited to perform at the ventriloquist convention. My big break. But I needed to practice on a receptive audience. You mean captive, Raven corrected. Tomato, tomato, which reminds me of another joke. What's red and invisible? No tomatoes. Get it? No tomatoes, because they're invisible. Nobody laughed. The silence was deafening. Laugh, Mortimer screamed. The gagged ventriloquists made sounds that could charitably be interpreted as laughter, but were probably sobs. Vincent, Raven said, turning to the confused ventriloquist who was having the worst day of his life. I'm going to need you to put Mortimer down. Put me down. Put me down. Mortimer's head started spinning again. This is my time. My moment. I haven't even done my closer. It's about a chicken crossing the road, but I forget why. Mortimer, Vincent said sadly, this has gone too far. You can't kidnap people and force them to watch our act. It's not our act. It's my act. You just move your lips badly while I do all the work. That's actually fair, Vincent admitted. Raven was about to call for backup when Officer Jenny Shoutsloud burst through the basement door, tablet in hand, looking both triumphant and exasperated. Detective, she shouted, living up to her name. You're never going to believe this. I finally thought to check the security footage from all 3 crime scenes. Security footage, Raven said weakly, his height shrinking to 5 feet 6 inches with embarrassment. Yes, the thing we should have checked 3 chapters, 3 days ago. Jenny turned the tablet toward them. Look, clear as day. A shabby dummy walking into each location, and guess who's carrying him? On the screen, grainy but undeniable, was Vincent Vox, carrying Mortimer into the bank, the orchestra hall, and the hot dog stand. I can explain, Vincent said quickly. Mortimer asked me to take him places. He said he wanted to see his friends perform. I didn't know he was planning to murder them." "You didn't think it was suspicious when he asked you to bring tiny weapons?" Jenny asked. "He said they were props for a new act about tiny violence." "And you believed that?" "Have you seen our regular act? Tiny violence would be an improvement." Mortimer's head spun a full 360 degrees. "You recorded my artistic crimes, my theatrical masterpieces. This is perfect. I'll be in forensic textbooks. The dummy who revolutionized puppet crime." "If we just checked this footage on day one," Jenny continued, glaring at Raven, "we could have solved this immediately. But someone was too busy developing theories about possessed puppets and supernatural revenge." "In my defense," Raven said, though he had no defense, "checking obvious evidence seemed too easy. I thought there had to be more to it." "There wasn't." Jerry gasped from his chair. "It was just a mediocre dummy with a god complex and an enabling ventriloquist." "Hey!" Mortimer protested. "My complex is entirely justified. Do you know how hard it is to develop a god complex with a jaw held on by wood glue?" Suddenly, the deranged dummy produced a tiny weapon, a miniature crossbow made from popsicle sticks and rubber bands. "Nobody's leaving until you appreciate my genius. Vincent may have carried me to the scenes, but the artistry was all mine. The tiny gun, the dramatic knife, the perfectly proportioned noose. I made those myself, with these wooden hands." "Mortimer, put the crossbow down," Vincent pleaded. "Never. Not until—" But Raven, in a rare moment of competence, simply reached over and plucked the tiny weapon from Mortimer's hand. It was, after all, made of popsicle sticks. "No!" Mortimer wailed. "My dramatic climax, ruined by practical thinking." In the confusion that followed, Jenny untied the 3 ventriloquists, while Raven held Mortimer at arm's length like a particularly disturbing piece of evidence. "Oh, thank God," Jerry gasped. "Do you have any idea what we've been through? 6 days of the worst comedy show in existence. He made us rank our favorite knock-knock jokes. They were all terrible. There were no favorites." "The horror," Winston added, rubbing his wrists. "He performed The Aristocrats, but forgot what made it funny. It was just a family doing taxes for 18 minutes. "I may never perform again," Terence whispered. "Every time I close my eyes, I see that button eye staring at me while he mangles the setup to the chicken joke." "Ingrates!" Mortimer screamed, his head now spinning so fast it was creating a small breeze. "You'll all regret this. I have material. Untested, probably terrible material. The world needs to hear my knock-knock jokes." "No," everyone said in unison. "It really doesn't." "The horror," Winston added, rubbing his wrists. "He performed The Aristocrats, but forgot what made it funny. It was just a family doing taxes for 18 minutes. "I may never perform again," Terence whispered. "Every time I close my eyes, I see that button eye staring at me while he mangles the setup to the chicken joke." "Betrayal!" Mortimer screamed, his head now spinning so fast it was creating a small breeze. "You'll rue this day, detective. Rue it. Which reminds me, what's the difference between rue and regret? I forget. But it's hilarious." Vincent, finally understanding the gravity of the situation, gently picked up Mortimer. "I'm sorry, old friend, but this ends now. You can't silence me. I have material. Untested. Probably terrible material. The world needs to hear my knock-knock jokes. No, everyone said in unison. It really doesn't. Vincent, finally understanding the gravity of the situation, gently picked up Mortimer. I'm sorry, old friend, but this ends now. You can't silence me. I'll get a lawyer, a tiny wooden lawyer. We'll sue for discrimination against puppet Americans. As the police arrived to arrest, well, they weren't quite sure who to arrest, since the criminal was technically an inanimate object. Raven surveyed the scene. 3 ventriloquists saved, 3 dummies avenged. 1 mediocre puppet's reign of terror ended. How did you know there was security footage? Jenny Shouts Loud asked, arriving just in time to claim credit for the rescue. I didn't, Raven admitted. I just remembered I probably should have checked that 3 chapters ago. 3 days ago. So you saved everyone by being bad at your job? It's called method detecting, Raven said with dignity he didn't possess. Very advanced. As Mortimer was carried away, still telling jokes to anyone who would listen, nobody, his voice echoed through the night. 2 Jews walk into a bar. No, wait, that's offensive. 2 dummies walk into a bar. The third one ducks. Get it? Ducks. Wait, I told it wrong. Vincent stood in his doorway, looking at his collection of ventriloquist posters with new eyes. Maybe I should take up juggling, he mused. Less chance of my props developing consciousness. Case closed, Raven announced, his height settling back to its canonical 5 feet 11 inches. The case of the vanishing ventriloquists is solved. The ventriloquists weren't vanishing. They were being held captive by a jealous dummy who just wanted someone to appreciate his terrible act. That's the stupidest solution to a case I've ever heard, Jenny said. Welcome to Crimson City, Raven replied, where the cases are made up and the heights don't matter. As they walked away from Vincent's house, leaving behind 3 traumatized ventriloquists and 1 very confused dummy owner, Raven couldn't help but feel satisfied. He'd solved another case through sheer incompetence and lucky timing. Just another typical Thursday in Crimson City. Or was it Friday? He really needed to get his watch fixed. The end. But Mortimer will return in The Silence of the Dummies. No, he won't. Or will he? Author's note. This final chapter is dedicated to everyone who's ever sat through a terrible comedy show and couldn't leave. Also to Mortimer the Mediocre, who just wanted to be appreciated for his complete lack of talent. Any resemblance to actual ventriloquist dummy uprisings is purely coincidental. Please applaud responsibly.